Hi and welcome to the Malat cookery channel. So today I'm going to be making lamb and rosemary kebabs. Now this is a really good alternative to a standard Sunday dinner. I'm also going to be making a rich lamb gravy to go with those kebabs. As usual, a full list of ingredients will be given at the end of the video, so let's have a look at those ingredients now and anything else we're going to need for today. Okay, so for today's recipe, I've got 600 grams of lamb. This is leg meat cut into 2cm cubes. So what I did here was I bought a small leg of lamb, bone in, deboned the lamb, used the bone to make the stock, which I'll go through in a minute, and then just cut the meat that was left into quite thick steaks and then cut that again into these 2cm cubes. I've got some root vegetables, so in here I've got some carrots and some parsnips cut into quite big chunky pieces, again about 2cm cubes. One medium onion which has been diced, 2 tablespoons of plain flour, a small knob of butter, so there's about 10 grams of butter here. I've made up 600 millilitres of lamb stock. So again, this was done with the bone from the lamb and also some of the trimmings. Boiled it for a couple of hours with a sprig of rosemary and then left it to cool down a little bit and then added just a little bit of gravy browning just to give it a little bit of colour. Going to be using some olive oil and also going to be using some sprigs of rosemary. So I've taken these from the garden. If you're not lucky enough to have a rosemary bush in the garden, then you can actually buy these from most supermarkets in packets. They're going to be used for our skewers. I'm also going to be using just a plain wooden skewer, and this is to make holes in both the meat and the root vegetables in order to get the rosemary sprigs through easily. So one of the things we want to serve with these kebabs, because these kebabs are just going to be an alternative to a Sunday roast, is we want to serve a really decent gravy, and the way to make really decent gravy is to take the meat that we're going to be cooking, sear it, create this Maillard reaction which I've talked about in a few videos. That creates a really nice flavour on the surface of the meat, gives it a really nice colour, but also deposits a lot of flavour into the pan, and it's that flavour that really does make a decent gravy. So we've got a decent glug of olive oil in the pan. This is about 5 to 6 tablespoons of olive oil. We've brought it up to temperature, it's nice and hot, so we add our meat. And get that meat searing. We want to sear the meat on all sides. So the lamb's been cooking now for about 5 or 6 minutes. I've turned it a couple of times. It's searing really nicely. You've got lots of flavour now within the pan. So the next thing to do, we'll just turn the heat down. I'm just going to reserve the lamb in a warmed oven just while we make the gravy. So I'm just taking the lamb out with a slotted spoon, making sure I'll leave as much of the juice in the pan as possible, because again that's what makes a really decent gravy. So the next thing to do is I'm just going to turn the heat up, and we're going to sweat our onions off for about 3 or 4 minutes, just until they start to go soft and translucent. Okay, so our onions have been cooking now for 2 or 3 minutes, started to go nice and soft. Next thing to do is to add the butter, and this will add even more richness to this delicious gravy. So we just work that in. So once that butter's melted, the next thing to do is to add the flour. And then we just want to cook this flour through for a couple of minutes. This is what's known as a roux, and this will thicken up that gravy nicely. This is a much better way to thicken gravy than using corn flour, because corn flour just doesn't add anything at all. In fact, it probably detracts from the flavour. So once that flour's cooked through, now we're going to add our stock. Just a little bit at a time, just to make sure that we don't end up with any large lumps. So I'm just going to let that cook through now and thicken. Take about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm just going to watch it and stir occasionally just to make sure that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. And then once we've got this where we need it to be, I'm then going to start making the lamb kebabs. So I've started to make the lamb kebabs while the gravy was thickening, so I just want to show you how I actually do that. So we take one of our sprigs of rosemary, take a piece of meat, and with the skewer just twist the skewer and go through the piece of meat. Place the rosemary through the hole, and then just gently pull up the meat until you get towards the end and stop. And then the same thing for the root vegetables. So we place the skewer all the way through. Feed that onto the rosemary. Same again with the meat. And we'll just carry on doing this until we've filled the sprig. All I'm doing is I'm just alternating the root vegetables, so I've already done a few of these just to save some time. Okay, so that's what we end up with. And we just carry on doing that until we've used up all of the meat and obviously the root vegetables as well. Okay, so that's all of our kebabs done. So the idea behind this is not only will it look good on the plate, but something different to serve as well, but that rosemary will give a real depth of flavour right through the meat because it's running through the centre. So the next thing we need to do is we take an oven-proof tray that has a rack in it. We then take our gravy which we made earlier and we just pour that into the bottom of the tray. So what this will do is, because we're dealing with kebabs, they can dry out quite easily. When the kebabs go into the oven, the gravy will give some humidity in there to stop the lamb kebabs from drying out, but also juices from the lamb kebabs will drop into the gravy and give that even more flavour. So we place our gravy into the bottom. We then line the rack with the kebabs. Okay, so now all of the kebabs are in the tray. Next thing I want to do is to just season with a little bit of salt. And some black pepper. So this tray is now going to get covered with kitchen foil sealed all around the edge nice and tight, and then placed into a preheated oven 160 degrees centigrade for between an hour and an hour and a half. And the way I'm going to be able to test to make sure that everything's cooked is I've saved a piece of root vegetable which I'm going to place into the corner. So after about an hour, I'll take the tray from the oven and then test that piece of root vegetable with a fork or the tip of a knife, just to make sure that the fork or knife will go through the vegetable, but there's still some resistance. So it's still firm, but the tip of the knife or the fork will actually go through the root vegetable. Then we know that everything's cooked. I'd rather do that than sacrifice a piece of the root vegetable that's actually on the kebabs. Okay, so these are our lamb kebabs, cooked. Took about an hour and 25 minutes. And again, this is our sacrificial piece of parsnip, where we were able to test to make sure they were cooked perfectly. Put some of that rich lamb gravy on the top. The flavour from that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to be serving this now with some crispy roast potatoes. As I said at the start, this is a really good alternative for a Sunday dinner. So how easy were they? Lamb and rosemary kebabs, as I said, a really good alternative for the standard Sunday dinner. Please subscribe to the channel, and as usual, if you've enjoyed this particular video, hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.